Jodie Foster's story is often told like a straight line from childhood brilliance to Hollywood permanence, but that simplicity misses the tension that has always defined her life. She is not just an actress who succeeded early, she is someone who grew up inside an industry that rarely paused to consider what it demanded from her. Her presence on screen has always carried a particular stillness, measured, intelligent, unflinching, as though every role required her to translate experience into restraint rather than expression. From her earliest years, she existed in a world where performance arrived before childhood had a chance to fully form. Camera did not wait for her to become ready, it simply began recording. What followed was a life shaped by discipline, expectation, and a rare kind of emotional self-containment that audiences would later mistake for distance. In truth, it was adaptation. Over time, she became known not just for acting, but for control over her career choices, her public image, and her privacy. That control was not born from perfectionism alone, but from necessity. When a life begins under observation, privacy becomes a form of survival rather than preference. Yet beneath the awards, acclaim, and cultural recognition, there is also a quieter story, one of family strain, emotional loss, and the long shadow of a childhood lived in motion rather than stillness. The brilliance the world applauded was never separate from the pressures that shaped it. To understand Jodie Foster is to understand that her life was never simply about fame. It was about endurance inside visibility, and the search for balance in a world that rarely allowed her to step out of frame. Early life and the weight of responsibility. Jodie Foster was born into a household defined less by stability than by adjustment. Her father left before her birth, leaving her mother to raise 4 children alone in Los Angeles. That absence was not just emotional, it was structural. It shaped the rhythm of the home, where survival required constant effort and attention rarely paused. Her mother became the central force of the family, carrying responsibility with determination rather than ease. In that environment, childhood did not unfold in the usual sense. Instead, it was shaped by awareness of work, schedules, and the fragility of financial security. The children learned early that stability was something maintained, not assumed. Jodie, the youngest, displayed remarkable early intelligence. She spoke early, read early, and absorbed information with unusual speed. Adults often described her as precocious, but what stood out more was her composure. She seemed to understand expectations without needing them explained. This early maturity would later be interpreted as talent, but it was also environment. When a child grows up in a home where responsibility is constant, awareness becomes instinctive. She learned to observe before reacting, to listen before speaking, and to perform when required. Even her name shifted with time, reflecting the fluid nature of identity in her early years. Jodie became the version of herself that entered public life, while Alicia Christian Foster remained tied to her private beginnings. Before Holly would ever enter the picture, she was already learning how to exist in systems of expectation. That foundation would shape everything that followed, not by limiting her, but by preparing her for a world that would soon demand even more. The child actor years and early industry exposure. Jodie Foster's entry into entertainment was not gradual. It was immediate. A commercial appearance at a very young age led to rapid recognition, and soon she was appearing regularly in advertisements and television roles. What set her apart was not simply talent, but reliability. She showed up, performed, and delivered consistently, even as a child. By the time most children are learning the structure of school life, she was already navigating sets, scripts, and production schedules. Her days were divided between school obligations and filming commitments, creating a dual existence that required constant adjustment. The industry quickly recognized her professionalism. Directors appreciated her focus, her ability to memorize dialogue quickly, and her composure under pressure. Yet what appeared as ease was actually adaptation. She had learned that work required steadiness even when she was tired or overwhelmed. As her career expanded, so did the demands placed on her time. She moved through television roles and early film appearances with increasing frequency. Each project added visibility, and with visibility came expectation. Audiences began to recognize her face, even as she was still forming her own sense of identity. What is often overlooked about child stardom is the absence of separation between personal growth and professional evaluation. Every performance is both work and self-definition. For Foster, this meant growing up in an environment where she was always being observed, always being assessed. Yet even within that structure, she developed a quiet independence. She learned to approach her work with seriousness, but without losing internal distance. That balance would become one of her defining traits, carried forward into adulthood and every major role she would later take on. Injury, pressure, and the physical reality of early fame behind the polished surface of early success was a more physical reality that often goes unmentioned. The demands placed on a child working in professional film environments, sets were not always controlled spaces of safety and comfort. They were working environments with real risks, long hours, and limited room for hesitation. During one early production involving animal work, she experienced a frightening incident that resulted in injury. Though she returned to filming shortly afterward, the experience left a lasting impression. It revealed in a very direct way that performance sometimes required proximity to danger. This was not an isolated moment. On another project involving stunts, she sustained an injury that required recovery. Yet even during healing periods, production schedules often continued. The expectation was continuity, films moved forward, whether or not individuals had fully recovered. What stands out in retrospect is not only the physical strain, but the emotional conditioning that accompanied it. She learned to continue working despite discomfort. She learned to separate internal experience from external performance. That separation became a survival skill within the industry. To observers, this appeared as professionalism. To the system, it was efficiency, but for the individual inside it, it was a form of adaptation that required emotional containment. These experiences did not define her in a dramatic sense, but they contributed to a deeper understanding of endurance. They reinforced the idea that presence mattered more than comfort, and that performance often required resilience beyond what audiences could see. This early exposure to physical and emotional pressure became part of the foundation upon which her later career was built, not as trauma in isolation, but as conditioning within a demanding environment. Taxi Driver and the Burden of Early Maturity, one of the defining moments of Jodie Foster's career, came with her role in Taxi Driver, a film that placed her in the center of intense critical attention. The character she portrayed required navigating emotionally difficult material, and the production itself was structured with caution and supervision due to her age. Despite protective measures, the experience was complex. The role demanded emotional depth that exceeded typical childhood experience, requiring her to access themes and situations far removed from her real life. This created a unique form of performance pressure, the need to understand without fully living. Her performance was widely praised upon release. Critics recognized her ability to convey complexity with restraint, and the role became a landmark moment in her career. It also positioned her as an extraordinary talent within the industry, capable of carrying emotionally demanding material at a young age. However, the long-term impact of such roles is not measured only in acclaim. It is also measured in how early exposure to intense subject matter shapes perception. For Foster, the experience reinforced her ability to compartmentalize an essential skill in her later work, but one that came with emotional cost. What audiences saw as maturity was, in part, professional adaptation. She had learned how to deliver performance while maintaining internal distance, a balance that allowed her to function within demanding creative environments. Taxi Driver became both a milestone and a turning point. It elevated her status in the industry while also deepening the complexity of her relationship with performance itself. It marked the moment when she was no longer viewed simply as a child actor, but as an artist capable of sustained seriousness. Adolescence, family bonds, and emotional grounding as her career progressed. Jodie Foster's relationship with her family remained a central grounding force in her life. Her mother, in particular, played a stabilizing role, maintaining structure and continuity in a world that was otherwise defined by schedules, sets, and public attention. Even as Foster's professional life expanded, her home life retained elements of normalcy whenever possible. Meals, routines, and private time provided contrast to the intensity of her working environment. These moments were not dramatic, but they were essential in maintaining balance. Adolescence, however, is always a period of transition, and for someone already embedded in a professional industry, that transition carried additional complexity. Identity development occurred alongside public recognition, making personal growth a visible process. Despite her growing fame, she maintained a strong internal distinction between public work and private life. This separation was not isolation but structure. It allowed her to function in both spaces without collapsing one into the other. Her relationship with her mother remained particularly significant. It represented continuity in a life defined by movement. While the industry demanded adaptability, family provided constancy. This period also marked the beginning of her increasing selectivity in roles and projects. Rather than accepting every opportunity, she began to evaluate work more carefully, signaling the emergence of long-term career control. What stands out in this phase of her life is not disruption, but balance, an ongoing effort to maintain identity while navigating a system that often seeks to define it externally. Loss, change, and the passage into adulthood later in life. Jodie Foster experienced the gradual illness and eventual loss of her mother, a deeply significant emotional transition. This period was not defined by public visibility, but by private adjustment. The shift from having a central family presence to confronting absence created a lasting emotional imprint. Grief in this context was not sudden but layered. It unfolded over time, beginning with gradual changes and culminating in final absence. The emotional experience was shaped not only by loss itself, but by the long process of witnessing decline. For someone whose life had been structured around discipline and control, grief introduced a different kind of reality, one that could not be managed through planning or performance. It required adaptation on an emotional level rather than a professional one. During this time, her public presence remained steady. She continued to work, direct, and participate in the industry, maintaining the same careful balance between visibility and privacy that had defined her career. However, personal loss often alters perception. It deepens awareness of time, relationships, and continuity. For Foster, this period marked a transition into a more reflective phase of life. Rather than redefining her identity, it reinforced the importance of what had always anchored her: work, family, and controlled presence in the public sphere. Loss did not redirect her path, but it added depth to it, shaping the emotional context within which she continued to live and create. Career maturity, selectivity, and creative authority in her adult career. Jodie Foster transitioned from constant performance to selective engagement. Rather than maintaining continuous visibility, she chose projects based on artistic value and personal interest. This shift reflected a broader evolution from actor to decision maker. She expanded into directing and producing, gaining greater control over storytelling and creative structure. This allowed her to move beyond interpretation into authorship, shaping narratives rather than solely inhabiting them. Her choices became increasingly intentional. Instead of pursuing volume, she pursued precision. This selectivity contributed to her reputation as an artist who prioritizes substance over exposure. Financially and professionally, her long career established significant stability. However, her approach to success remained measured. She did not emphasize accumulation or spectacle, but sustainability and autonomy. She also engaged in mentoring and philanthropic work within the film industry, supporting emerging talent and contributing to institutional programs that encourage creative development. What defines this stage of her life is not transformation, but consolidation. The elements of discipline, control, and emotional distance that began in childhood evolved into professional structure and artistic independence. Her career became less about presence and more about choice: what to do, when to appear, and how to engage. Legacy and reflection, a life of controlled visibility. Jodie Foster's legacy is often described in terms of awards, performances, and longevity, but its deeper structure lies in something less visible: control over narrative and self-definition. Few actors maintain relevance across decades while preserving such a strong boundary between public image and private life. Her career demonstrates a rare continuity, moving from child actor to adult filmmaker without collapse or reinvention driven by external pressure. Instead, she evolved gradually, maintaining coherence across each stage of life. What stands out most is not intensity, but restraint. In an industry built on exposure, she consistently chose limits. In a culture that often rewards visibility, she prioritized privacy. This balance became one of her defining characteristics. Her work continues to be respected for its intelligence and precision, while her personal life remains largely outside public consumption. This separation is not absence, but intention. Ultimately, her story is not one of dramatic transformation, but of sustained navigation through a demanding environment. It is about maintaining identity in a system that constantly projects identities onto others. Her life reflects a simple but powerful principle. Longevity in public life requires boundaries as much as talent. Outro: the quiet strength behind the image. Jodie Foster's journey resists simple interpretation because it was never shaped by a single defining moment. It was shaped by accumulation of work, responsibility, experience, and choice. From childhood, exposure to professional acting, through acclaim, challenge, and loss, her life reflects continuity rather than disruption. What remains consistent throughout is her ability to maintain internal structure in external visibility. She learned early that being seen does not require being exposed entirely, and that survival within a demanding industry depends as much on boundaries as on performance. Her story also reflects the complexity of growing up in public. Success arrived early, but understanding arrived gradually. Over time, she developed a relationship with her career that was both engaged and distanced, allowing her to participate without being consumed. Today, she stands as a figure defined not only by what she has achieved, but by how she has chosen to exist within achievement. Her presence in cinema is significant, but her absence from unnecessary visibility is equally defining. There is no final resolution to her story, because it is still ongoing. What can be observed instead is a pattern, careful choices, sustained discipline, and a consistent refusal to allow external narratives to fully define her. In the end, her life is less about spectacle than structure, less about fame than continuity, and less about being seen than being understood on her own terms.